Indeed, the keynote speaker, Mr. Julian Roche, did not fail us, as he delivered a truly landmark keynote, as expected to be the case at the landmark conferences, the 50th LIBER annual conference. It is, as you can see, a beautiful day today in Belgrade, as it is probably all across Europe. We greet you in front of the University Library Belgrade building, built in 1926. At that time, it was the first building built in Serbia with the purpose of being a library. As mentioned before, it is one of the 3 Carnegie frontline libraries, alongside with Reims in France and Leuven in Belgium. Libraries in these 3 cities have been destroyed in the war and rebuilt after the war with the help of Andrew Carnegie Foundation. If this was a conference organized live in the city of Belgrade, we would now take a walk, either to grab a snack or get a bit of fresh air. Hopefully next year we will meet all in person. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back inside and listen to the next part of our program, the sponsored presentation of EBSCO Information Services. This interesting presentation will be given by Mr. Roman Piontek, the Director of Software as a Service Innovation at EBSCO Information Services. Mr. Piontek, the floor is yours.
I hope that the sharing is working and that my audio is working. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. This is really just a short presentation about a few platforms that we at EBSCO, and I'm an employee of EBSCO's, are dealing with, are promoting. These platforms will be 4 I would like to briefly touch upon today. 2 of them are open access, so the platforms as such are open access, although they themselves deal with open research. And 2 of them are open source. One is completely open source and one is endowed with a few proprietary elements, but the core is open source. So all of that serves the purpose to help the research community. So that could be the individual researcher, that could be the community as a whole, and also the institutions dealing with research, to provide the platforms to gain the stewardship, to gain stewardship for their output. And of course, adhering to open access, open science, open resource, open research, and open source standards as stipulated by the community. All that, I think, might be interesting because EBSCO has been traditionally known as a content provider company and as an aggregator of databases and as a subscription agency, but we are still a subscription agency, and yes, we still have our databases that we're offering, but apart from that, we're also encouraging the use of these open access platforms and offering services around them. So what are these 4 platforms that I would like to briefly touch upon today? If we talk about the architecture within which these platforms sit or might sit, then everything, of course, starts with the repository. We don't provide repositories, but we provide integration with all kinds of repositories. So it could be a DSpace, it could be a Haiku, or anything else, really. That is also an important factor, to be agnostic as far as a third-party pieces of software go. But then the 2 open access platforms are firstly CodeOcean, and that is for the sharing, for the creation, and the structuring, really, of code, data, and also the environment that pertains to these bits of code, so that they can be executed on the platform itself without going through the hassle of doing the installation and then looking for components that might be needed. All of that is already and bundled on the platform. Then the second one is Protocols.io, and that is very comparable to the CodeOcean platform. It is, in this case, not for the storage and structuring of code, but really for methods such as lab protocols, for example. Then I will proceed to showing you bits of two other platforms. One is Archivum Perpetua, which is for the safeguarding and preservation of materials of all kinds of sources and resources. And normalization is something that we will be touching upon briefly. And then ultimately it's Folio. So that is a unified management platform, which is completely open source. So Archivum is based upon open source, but it also has proprietary elements, whereas Folio is fully open source. And there is a community around all of these platforms to which we belong, and we encourage the use of these platforms. So without further ado, that was just one slide that I wanted to show you. Let me now go into the browser and show you the platforms live as they are. So let me start with this philosophy behind CodeOcean, which will be the first platform that I would like to touch upon. What we see here is not CodeOcean, it's simply a GitHub page. Incidentally, a GitHub page that deals with the Folio code. So that is another of these four platforms that I would like to present to you a little bit later. And in this case, we see all kinds of bits, of code bits, if you will. Right. So if I now wanted to start my work with the platform, I would have to download all these bits. I would have to look at the documentation. I would have to find out which operating system I might need, which server specifications, which additional modules, and so on. Now, CodeOcean wants to remedy that. This is CodeOcean, and on that I can find all kinds of capsules. And that is a set of not just the code as I can find it on GitHub, and of course there is also a synchronization with GitHub because GitHub is the platform for code, but a capsule does the following. It not only encapsulates the code that is needed and the different code parts, but also the primary data, as we can see here, and the data can be large, right? So it can go into the realm of gigabytes. But it also stores, and we are seeing one of these capsules right now, not just the metadata and the code, right? So if I go into some of these bits, I see the actual code, right? So this is a Python file, for example. No, but it's also the environment, right? So I have all my Docker files, everything that I need to actually run the code. And I can do that within the system, right? So you see this button here, reproducible run, and I can do exactly what the researcher envisaged with this bit of code, with this capsule, without having to install anything. Everything is encapsulated together. So that is why such a platform can help with the reproduction of the actual research outcomes. I can actually see how the researcher came to that very result. Now, I won't do that. You can do that yourselves, right? So the platform is open access. You can go onto that platform, have a look at these capsules, run them right there, or you can run them in a cloud workstation. And that's that. And of course, there is also versioning and right, so you can see this one goes up to version 7.2, for example, and the capsules as such do not just belong to IT departments, right? So or to IT sciences. No, you can see that, of course, everything in today's world is also associated with code. And I have an example from the social sciences here, for example. And the capsule can have a DOI that can be minted on the platform, as well as, of course, the associated output, the publication as such. Now, we see an example of such a publication. So this is an HTML full text. And the capsule is embedded right here, right? So I don't have to go to the CodeOcean platform. I see the associated platform, the view onto the platform right here in the article, right? So this is really the article, and I can do the run right there and have a look at what the researcher envisaged together with that output. Now, some universities have opted for putting all these code capsules that have been created by their researchers onto their portals, right? So this is a Princeton portal where you see the CodeOcean reproducibility capsules right here all together. There is also a way of interacting with the repository. So I see the Harvard Dataverse here, and I see parts of what belong to the platform, sorry, to the capsule, and they are synchronized. So as soon as anything changes on the CodeOcean platform, then I will have it synchronized with the repository and vice versa. Now, that was a brief overview of CodeOcean. Now, let me move on to Protocols.io, which is quite comparable to CodeOcean. And you can start by creating your free account today. So it's really an open access platform for open research. And it wants to help with the codification of specific methods, right? So if I choose a method that pertains to the sequencing of RNA, then I can actually see the different steps that belong to that method, right? So step 1, step 2, step 3, what kinds of materials do I need, when exactly? So this is a chemical example, but it can also be used in social sciences, for example, and so on and so forth. And I see the differences between a copied version of mine that I have stored in my private area and the one that is openly accessible to the community. And then there is a palette that I can work with, right? So if I actually go into the steps of such an editable version of that method, I can add my amounts, and they will be also tagged as amounts, right? So this is just like HTML, if you will. There is information on what it means. It is not just a string of numbers or letters, but it actually means something. And the platform knows what it means. So it's really the structural element of all that is so important around that. And researchers can then go onto the platform and create their own space, such as this researcher from a university in Munich, where he has put up all of the methods that belong to his research. And that can also be done on an institutional level and so on. Now, let me now come closer to the end of my presentation with a short overview of the two other platforms that I mentioned. So the two that I just showed you, those are open access for open research. Those two latter ones will be open source. So Folio is a good example of a community project where the code is all open source, but then there are different individual libraries, individual archives, consortia, and also service providers that then provide hosting, implementation, and other services around this platform. And the platform is really for all things library. So we see a view of Folio right now. So this is a demo installation, and you have all kinds of modules, right? So for all the things that have to be done within a library or within an archive, that could be the financial aspect where you deal with your funds, for example. That could be the inventory of the data and metadata that you have on shelf or that you have subscribed, and that would be one of these modules, the e-holdings, where I can then connect it to a knowledge base of electronic materials, and I see, Brill as a provider has 271 packages, and I can now start working with them, adding them to the pool of the data that I want to be accessible to my users of my library. That is, of course, open access content, but also payable content. And I can now start putting together my library, if you will. So that's the electronic aspect. Here we see the print aspect or physical aspect, right? So it doesn't have to be a book. It can also be a video recording or any other material type. And this is the place where I can deal with the metadata, with also the item level data, right? So where it sits in my library, is it available? Can it be circulated and all of that? So really a full library system that I can put together the way I need it because it's modular. and I don't have to go for the full package. I can really go for just spotlights of it. Now, that also means that it can be endowed with new modules that you only need for a specific library that can be coded by somebody in the community, or the library can code them themselves. In this case, it is a community module for Perpetua, and that is the fourth platform that I would like to briefly touch upon, which is here, in this case, connected to Folio. It is a platform of long-term preservation and archiving, and this module shows me, there is a result that pertains to Jupyter, and it is on this other long-term preservation platform, but it is also connected with this particular Folio installation. And when I click on that, I get all the hierarchies that belong to that. I get the data and the actual files. And these files can now be stored according to the Open Archiving Information System, OAIS, which incidentally was largely invented by NASA, because they had the problem in the 70s. Was it back in the 60s? 60s or 70s? Pardon me for having forgotten that, when a Mars mission came back with lots of data, but over time the data became inaccessible. So they were then, they started working on paradigms to preserve these data in perpetuity, and what has to be done in order to keep the versioning and to keep everything up to date and really not lose any data. And this is what the Archive and Perpetua platform does in the background. So we are seeing a back office view of it, and I see different pools of my data, and I see the files here, the original files in dark green, but then I also see the lighter green normalized files that I have normalized according to my prescriptions, if you will. So let's think of an old format such as WordPerfect. Nobody really uses WordPerfect anymore, so I can choose to normalize it automatically into the latest version of Word that can actually be opened by modern computers.
Mr. Piontek, sorry to interrupt you. My name is Vanya. Looking forward to hear if you have more in the presentation. I'm just...
no, this is the end.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the clock, and we listen carefully to your presentation. Just a heads up that we are approaching soon the final part of this one. Thank you so much.
Perfect, because this is the end. This is the end. This is the final view in my browser. This is what it can look like for the end user, where the archival material is then presented. And this is a real example from the University of Westminster. So really a very brief overview of 4 platforms, open access and open source, that we are promoting. And if you're interested in more information on that, do let me know. Thank you.
Thanks.